The progress report on the implementation of President Cyril Ramaphosa's response to the Judicial State Capture Commission is out. It highlights the actions and responses from the President to Chief Justice Raymond Zondo's recommendations. So we're going to unpack this progress report with Professor Alex van den Heever from the Wits School of Governance. Prof. Alex, good afternoon and thanks for your time with us here at the SABC at this hour.
Good afternoon.
The opening line, the tide is turning. That's how the report reads this time round. Dealing with perpetrators of state capture, corruption rather, criminal cases, asset recovery and administrative action. How would you weigh in on how we're faring? Is South Africa making progress in fighting state capture?
We're not really making progress at all. And I think this progress report is a bit of a whitewash about in relation to the process since the Zondo report. It tries to reflect what has happened in a positive light, but it fails to indicate what the gaps were that resulted in state capture and the extent to which any kind of mitigating structures, processes and prosecutions have actually occurred in relation to that gap. And when you start to look at the facts of the matter, very little of any substance has happened.
Thank you for those opening remarks, Prof. Political and economic reforms needed to come to the fore. In fact, many calling for it to be prioritized. How would you weigh in on that? The reforms needed to prevent future occurrence of state capture, to protect the state and future enablers at large?
Yeah, so at a very systemic level, they've included in this report the Electoral Act, which was clearly hamstrung. The process was poorly run by the Minister of Home Affairs, Aaron Matsaledi, who essentially did everything he could to frustrate the process of a proper reform of the Electoral Act. And so we don't account. That's the first level. The other level, at a strategic level, is that our bodies that are meant to prosecute and investigate these various matters have been frustrated as well. Their budgets have been cut. The National Prosecuting Authority, the Hawks, have budgets that are tiny in relation to the VIP protection services.
Prof, if you could just pick up from that last point. We did seem to lose connection there, but do continue. You were just outlining some of the lack of reforms. Do continue.
Yes, so the third element would be the reform of the corporate governance structures of the state-owned enterprises. There's no substantial to those.
Progress report that had been unveiled. We're going to be in conversation with Professor Alex van den Heever from the Wits School of Governance. Again, Prof, good afternoon. Welcome back. In fact, you were speaking about how South Africa was faring in terms of the progress made in fighting state capture. And just before we lost you, you were weighing in on the reforms, the much needed reforms, and also the legislative processes underway that was also, explored in the report. Help us understand further.
Yeah, so the changes to the state-owned enterprises have not been really focused on the core problem. The Zondo report essentially indicated that there was a problem with cadre deployment as a key structural feature of the state capture process, and that really requires that you eliminate the ability of political appointees to appoint people into major organs of state. And so it requires that there is the separation of powers that should be implemented. None of that has happened. The further issue is that if we had to look at the other reforms, the Electoral Act hasn't been amended to make the electoral process more efficient. We have the intelligence legislation that has been introduced, which first of all tried to introduce measures to effectively attack the public, which was to subject NGOs to some kind of security evaluation, plus the ability to surveil the public in the intelligence bills really requires that a member of the executive appoint a judge to supervise whether or not they should introduce surveillance on any person in South Africa. And the appointment of a judge means that judge is not a member of the judiciary. They become a creature of the executive. So rather than eliminate the problems that we're looking at, it compounds them. In terms of prosecutions and following up people, the Zondo report has really not been affected. All the big honchos who are behind state capture have essentially not been pursued effectively. Jacob Zuma being one of the key people, the Guptas being the other. All of these particular prosecutions and processes seem to just vaporize. We haven't seen follow-ups against Nomvula, Makunyana, Gigaba, Gwede Mantashe, etc. None of these people seem to be a serious priority for the National Prosecuting Authority. And they claim they don't have enough budget, and government doesn't want to allocate them any additional budget. So these are all issues which I would say are seriously problematic. The other issue mentioned in the report is that the PFMA and the MFMA have been adjusted as well, supposedly looking at the Zondo report. But what we've seen actually is that National Treasury sought to water down the way in which irregular expenditure would now be reported, rather than to deepen and strengthen those provisions. So this is really odd. In many cases, they've done the opposite of what you'd have expected as a response to this report, to the Zondo report.
Well, Prof, thank you for those sentiments, because at this point, how would the report serve as a teachable moment for South Africa? And what are your concerns, going forward, at the pace of it all as well?
Well, I think that what this report indicates is that the brakes are on. I mean, there is no real attempt to take forward the Zondo report. It quite clearly implicates so many structures within the governing party that they are unable to really move forward. You start prosecuting one, you have to prosecute 100, so they prosecute none. So I think that we've got a real problem in that when, instead of actually pursuing vigorously the implementation of the Zondo report, we've got a freeze on all of our key structures of governance in South Africa, which is really worrying. We need to basically say the NPA, the Hawks, all of these structures need to be made functional. And our judiciary is also subject to the misadministration of the Department of Justice. The courts are not functioning efficiently, and they can't control their own processes. And this is also, again, down to the executive. So virtually nothing that should have been prioritized out of this report is being done. We really need to be very, very watchful.
And then, Prof, the issue of trust and ethics also obviously coming to the fore. The timing of it all as we edge closer to elections. What are you observing as we conclude very quickly?
So I think that there's obviously a concern that people feel that the Zondo report and pursuing it is embarrassing to the party, and so they would rather not do anything. So this is really a problem, because we still allow political decisions in relation to electoral politics to dominate actually the rule of law. And the rule of law must predominate in all instances. And these cases of corruption are so serious. These are the most serious crimes that we can have in South Africa, because they fundamentally undermine the performance of the state, as we're seeing. And they should be prosecuted vigorously, and they are not.
Prof, thank you for your time with us at this hour. Professor Alex van den Heever from the Wits School of Governance weighing in. We know the progress report on the implementation of President Cyril Ramaphosa's response to the Judicial State Capture Commission is out. Professor Alex just weighing in on the progress made, and really waiting from here the implications at large as well.